Hello, everyone, and welcome to StudyTravel TV Live, a show of news, statistics, and opinion. I'm Bethan Norris, Senior Editor of StudyTravel Magazine.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicola Hancock, Editor of StudyTravel Magazine. Before we get started, for the best viewing experience, please put the call in side-by-side speaker view. You will see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
We're delighted to welcome you all today to this episode of StudyTravel TV Live, the first of 2023. In today's broadcast, we'll start with a news story, and then we'll be joined by our guests this week, Reka Lenart, Association Manager of ALTO, and Alex Argenta, President of Brazilian Agency Association Belta, and CEO of Travelmate, Intercambio, and Turismo.
If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on the stories, please post them in the chat box and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to the sponsor of this episode, Felka.
So let's take a look at our first story. Two recent agency surveys have shown promising signs for the sector, including research by Brazilian Agency Association Belta, which revealed that in the January to September 2022 period, the average growth for agencies compared with the same period of 2019 was 13%.
The research covered 756 points of sale across Brazil, almost 600 of which were operated by Belta member agencies, and also showed that language courses were the most sold product, followed by junior courses, high school programs, and language plus work. Higher education also commanded greater market share than in 2019.
Canada was the most popular destination for Brazilian agencies, followed by the USA and the UK, which overtook Ireland in 2022. Agents said that the devaluation of the real against other countries was the largest barrier to further growth, followed by airfares and visa difficulties.
Meanwhile, the latest Agents Perception Survey by Pathway Group Navitas, completed by 880 agencies, shows positive demand trends for all of the major English-speaking higher education destinations.
89% agreed that there had been an increase in interest for the UK in the previous 2 months, followed by Canada on 84% and Australia with 81%, its most positive performance in the Navitas survey since the pandemic began. 2/3 agreed there was more interest in the USA and 59% agreed the same for New Zealand.
So at this point, we'd like to introduce our guests, Reka and Alex. Hello, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, thanks a lot for the invitation.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today.
Lovely, thank you. So these were very promising signs from Brazil, Alex. When the report was released, you described it as probably the best moment ever in the international education market in Brazil. So why do you think the market recovered so strongly last year?
Yeah, after, quite a difficult time with the pandemic, I really believe that the Brazilian resilience has made a big difference in our market here, So I always like to point out that the quality and the maturity of international education agents you can find in Brazil nowadays is very good. So this really helps, recovering from any unexpected situation has happened, and nowadays Brazilians can just, if they do a quick search, they're going to find quality service in our field. So this is the major part of it. And by the other side, we always talk about political and economical instability in Brazil. At the end of the line, it's not really anything new for us. It has been here for our whole life, at least from what I remember since I was a teenager. So, despite of these instabilities here and there, we see that Brazil is stronger as a country, worldwide speaking, year after year. Our presence worldwide is well known more and more. And as a consequence of that, more and more families are seeing that international education has almost become a must for you to succeed in your future career in Brazil. So this is also a very positive thing, that helps our market growth at the moment, I believe.
Okay, and have these positive trends continued since the survey was conducted in October? And what are the hot destinations and products at the moment?
See, as I mentioned, as the market has been mature in Brazil for a long time, I believe we won't see a lot of big changes in the main destinations and main programs in Brazil, as everything is quite popular in Brazil right now in international education. But still, our surveys show that the top destinations for Brazilians are Canada, US, the UK, Ireland, and Australia. But it's always good to mention the importance of Malta and also New Zealand for the Brazilian market. New Zealand is picking up again, as it was kind of the last country to open for Brazilians, but it's always important. And I also like to always point that the United Emirates, especially Dubai, has become a new destination in international education throughout the pandemic, and it's probably going to be here for a long time. Besides that, talking about programs, we see that language programs in general, language programs and work experiences is also popular in Brazil, besides teen programs and high school programs. But it's very important to point out that higher education programs are becoming more and more popular in Brazil, especially, I believe, because you right now, once again, can find very good quality agents in Brazil for these kind of programs, which helps people understanding that it's not really so difficult to find a good undergraduate or postgraduate program abroad. With the help of good agents, the way is shorter to get there.
Thank you for that insight there. Reka, through the ALTO Trends Barometer and the ALTO Pulse, you have been tracking actual business performance as well as projections for the months ahead during the COVID-19 pandemic. So what do those platforms tell us about the recovery of the language sector?
But the big difference between these two projects is obviously the Pulse was always examining leader sentiment. We were trying to find out how our leaders feel about the speed of recovery as we were coming out of the pandemic. And it was interesting to see how that changed quarterly, depending on what source market or what destination country you're based in. And the Trends Barometer is basically real live arrival data. Student arrivals are recorded every week at the schools. And the data starts in January 2019, which is important because to compare figures that happened in 2022, 2021 doesn't really give us too much information in terms of the pre-pandemic figures. So we found it important that we started collecting the data in January 2019 so that we can see the full cycle of the effects of the pandemic. We can see literally it's like a visual line when the pandemic hit the entire world. And if you participate in this project, then it gives you a real lift to be seeing those numbers going up as we go into 2021, 2022. And another interesting info that we found out only recently is that we were comparing the projections that happened during the pandemic in 2021, the figures that leaders were hoping to recover about 50% of the business, of the pre-pandemic business in the summer of 2022. And the arrival figures that our schools are recording on the Trends Barometer totally match this sort of anticipation. So it just gives me hope and sort of another push. I'm a bit of a geek for data, and And I always find it a bit frustrating when we don't get enough responses to different surveys. And I feel like it's really a tool that business leaders around the world could have used and could be using to help them make decisions in their day-to-day work.
Okay, thank you. And you track data from both agencies and language providers. Have there been any notable differences between the two in the surveys that you've noticed?
So it was the past that we were collecting data from both agents and schools, and funnily enough, the bigger deviation was more to do with either in certain quarters the source country was very optimistic because of some travel restrictions were lifted, or a destination country had some new regulations coming in which allowed them to receive students. So overall, global figures, agents and schools kind of followed each other. And I think it was also what we also heard from our members was that agents were trying to keep the schools sort of positive, saying, look, we have these students, they're knocking down the door, they want to travel, they're just waiting for the opportunity to come to your school. So the school and agency projections were moving more or less together in the same level.
Thanks. And Alex, would you agree with the Navitas findings of growing interest for most HE destinations?
Yeah, as I just mentioned, I believe I agree with that. When I look at the Brazilian market, I see two sides of it. One side is what I mentioned. It's easier for people to get consultancy for these kind of programs nowadays in Brazil, so that they're not really afraid to apply for a university program abroad, which makes this easier and more popular. And by the other hand, usually the student visas in all the countries, that organize for this kind of programs brings legal work for the students. In some countries, it also helps with the path for some kind of immigration. Everything official and everything. So this is very important for Brazil. And when we look at some surveys for even Latin America, the work portion or the work rights for students is very important, because it's a way for them to kind of auto-finance their experience abroad. And this is always linked with higher education programs.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on now to our next story. Next up to the Netherlands, where the Education Minister has written to universities to ask them to temporarily stop international student recruitment activities, citing housing shortages and teacher workloads.
The minister said that exceptions could be made in limited areas, but asked institutions to no longer advertise to potential applicants and to stop attending fairs and workshops, at least until next month, while the government considers its options.
Association Universities of the Netherlands confirmed to StudyTravel Magazine that members have put recruitment activities on hold in line with the request. However, a number of institutions have expressed their opposition to the policy.
According to the Census National Student Housing Monitor, there were 22,000 students who were unable to obtain student accommodation in 2020, and that number is forecast to rise to 50,000 by 2024-25 academic year.
So let's go to Alex first. Does this concern you? Do you think this is an honest approach by the Netherlands to ensure that the accommodation problem doesn't get worse?
It's a very delicate issue, but very important for international education. At the same time, it's really hard for me to express my opinion against any government suggestion. Of course, any government, I think, all over the world may have the bigger and the best picture about its own country. But what I see is that it's good to be careful about this, not to leave students on the streets, let's say, but I know that, I feel that, now it's kind of the end of the pandemic, things are really getting smoother on this side all over the world. And we're going to see a very better picture, an easier picture for everybody towards accommodation in 2023. You know, I believe that in some countries in Europe, which is also a delicate issue to touch, but when we talk about the war in Ukraine, it also, you know, has affected a lot of European countries on that as well, making it difficult as well. So, you know, we also believe that this progresses to maybe to an end soon or something. So it may be easier for everybody on that. And besides that, you know, I think that this accommodation issue may also call attention even for agents and also for the students, that they should start planning more and more, you know, ahead their international education programs or projects. You know, the more, you know, maybe something that we could plan 6 months in ahead, now we have to plan 1 year in ahead. So if we work on this with more time, it makes things easier and better for everybody. So maybe that's the biggest advice with this still current issue on accommodation.
Okay, we've been talking about student accommodation a lot, particularly homestay on our previous STtv live shows. Have you discussed this with ALTO members recently, Reka? And do you see any improvement in capacity in 2023?
I think host family accommodation is, you know, had its challenges in the summer for sure. There's been quite a few discussions about this, and I think that the challenge obviously for schools to be working with a reduced number of host families who are asking for a higher fee. And then this sort of explosion of students arriving to the schools and trying to place them with families, then the agency complains. So it's obviously this is a big discussion. But I think that the important issue here is one of them is the price increase, which is you know, the global inflation is the driver behind that. Maybe not so much the pandemic or the combination of the two. And to be kind of aware of this issue of the global inflation, and to be in the lead of the conversation that's happening in the industry. Within that, we created a working group to look at ways to how we could protect our businesses against the effects. And one of the possibilities is moving towards the dynamic pricing there. For example, something like this, something like the accommodation service of schools could be a little bit more flexible, more flexibly charged than the school fees. But I think overall, to keep a sort of close eye on how dynamic pricing could be coming into the industry, whether we want it or not. ALTO always feels that it's better to go around the topic and to be in charge of the conversation, and to look at the pros and cons, and to give it a frame of what we will what we're trying to achieve with it, and to make sure that we are not being imposed by a global distribution system that was not created by someone who is part of the industry. Overall, the host family option could be on the way out, I believe, and both schools and hopefully increasingly agents are perhaps moving towards the residential option. But this has to be a sort of you know, a cooperative and very transparent communication between the partners to make sure that the clients have the you know, the client expectation management. We always talk about this, and I think in terms of the accommodation, this is particularly important because it can ruin the whole experience. It can ruin the reputation of the school just by being placed in the wrong host family or not having the quality services that you're expecting.
Okay, thanks for that. And Alex, coming back to your Belta survey, accommodation wasn't the biggest barrier to business for agents, but it was ranked much higher in 2022 than in previous surveys. Have you had bookings disrupted because of lack of supply? In your opinion, which destinations are most reliable currently?
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't really point out most reliable destinations because, everything is still popular in Brazil. And then the point is to find maybe in each country the best way not to be affected with this accommodation issue. I haven't really seen a big, let's say, discrepancy in bookings because of accommodation, but we have seen a lot of changing of destination options. So maybe someone would like to go to Ireland in a certain point, but there was an issue with accommodation for the time that he was trying to book, the program. So maybe this student had to change to go, let's say, to Canada or to the US or to another place where things would be smoother at that point. And what we've seen also is even inside the same country, sometimes there is a big accommodation issue going on in a larger city. But maybe if you go to smaller cities in those places, in those countries, you're not going to find that problem. There are some schools that they have even started to use that as a sales point for them, as an opportunity. So look, usually you like to go to this capital city, but if you come here to to this smaller town here still in Canada, in Ireland, whatever, you're not going to have any problem. We have dozens of families waiting for students, a lot of residential opportunities and everything. So kind of this trend, this change of of destinations, even inside the same country, maybe is one of the changes we have seen lately here because of this.
Interesting, thank you. Right, let's take a look at our next story. Australia's ELICOS English language sector has shown signs of recovery, with the number of course commencements in October 2022 actually exceeding 2019 levels, according to the latest data released by the Department of Education.
The department data shows that in the year up to October 2022, there were 58,104 ELICOS course commencements by student visa holders, an increase of 126% compared with the same period of 2021.
All of the top 10 source markets recorded growth, and there was triple-digit growth from Colombia, Brazil, Japan, Vietnam, and Thailand. Student visa data from the Department of Home Affairs is also positive, with the independent ELICOS visa applications and grants both at record levels.
A number of openings and expansions have also been announced recently, including both Lexis English and ILSE opening in Perth and Langport's expanding in Brisbane.
The recovery will be welcome for the sector, which lost some $4.6 billion from ELICOS student declines, according to a report by English Australia. The association estimates a direct impact from declines in student numbers of $1.9 billion, based on tuition fees and student spending. Other sectors have lost more than 40,000 students from the ELICOS pipeline, equating to a further $2.7 billion, English Australia said.
So, Alex, in the year-to-date data for October 2022, there was growth of 347% for Brazil compared with the previous year. Of course, this is comparing back to a year when Australia was still closed, but it seems like business for Australia is flying now. Would you agree?
Yes, of course. And as we've been discussing, it makes more sense to compare numbers with the reality in 2019 than, comparing 2022 to 2021. So especially now that Australia is fully open finally, and happily, for all of us. I believe that, when we see new schools opening up, as you just mentioned, it shows that the market is getting confidence again, and it's evolving once again. It's always good to say that in Australia, the work rights for students are even better than before right now, at least in Australia. So it helps a lot for this recruitment. There are some, local governments, incentives for international education, which has helped a lot of recruitment in Australia as well. And besides that, the visa processing reality, I believe, is getting to a better level once again. So this also, once again, a lot of positive things. We just see positive things when we look at every single issue that helps with the Australian numbers. So it's probably going to be very positive in 2023 in Brazil as well.
And the Department of Home Affairs data showed that there was a 77% approval rate for ELICOS applications in the year up to October 2022. This was lower than typical pre-pandemic rates at around 85%. So have you encountered any issues with visas to Australia, Alex?
I just mentioned, actually, looks positive right now. Processing times are really okay right now. It's better than they were before. And then I believe that this, percentage, this a bit negative percentage that you just mentioned, is maybe due because to a lot of visas that were stuck because of the pandemic. They were stopped there for so long, and then maybe when those files had to be reorganized or something, maybe this caused some kind of visa denials above what we were used to. But once again, I really see that things are more positive right now, and I believe that these figures are going to be better throughout 2023.
Great, thank you. And we'll take one more news story. We're going back to the UK now, where there's been a great deal of activity in the summer school sector since our last show in late November.
Yes, David Game College has launched an academic summer school with 3 different career pathways, as well as an English language course with specialist electives.
Independent school Queen Ethelburgers has announced it will run its first ever international summer school, which will take place at the 220-acre campus with junior and senior streams and a choice of English language, academic and sports options.
As flagged on one of our previous shows, Bell has confirmed a return to St Albans with a year-round residential campus for young learner programs and groups.
And UKLC has announced a partnership with Clifton College, an independent college, on a 100-acre site in Bristol to deliver summer programmes for individuals and small groups, bringing its portfolio to 13 locations.
And ELAC Study Vacations has announced a new summer centre at Royal Agricultural University in Cirencester, its 7th summer location across England.
Are these openings a positive sign that the UK summer school junior sector is returning to full business in 2023? We're going to ask Reka that question.
Definitely. I mean, these empty campuses in the summer are a match made in heaven with the junior program organizers. And I think that as the parent confidence is returning now, basically we're not preparing for this summer for 2023. We're not thinking about any travel restrictions. We're not worried about we won't be able to travel or we have to cancel. And I believe that perhaps now with the full year coming ahead, maybe the government-sponsored programs will return, at least within Europe as well. So that could increase the number of junior business perhaps in the UK. Although some of our members reported that the aftermath of Brexit, the famous sort of passport versus identity card, what the juniors used to be able to travel to the UK with, it might be reducing the appetite for junior courses in the UK. But I believe that with the parent confidence returning and maybe the agencies kind of gathering themselves, I believe that there might have been some agents going out of business who were solely relying on junior business, because imagine you literally didn't have any clients that were able to travel for 2 years. And so I do think that this is really positive news, and that the junior, one of our members actually reported that they're hoping to get to 70% of their pre-pandemic levels in 2023. So fingers crossed for the juniors.
Indeed. I mean, StudyTravel Magazine's recent special report on juniors showed that junior students as a share of overall business decreased from 54% in 2019 to 9% in 2021 in the UK, with similar declines in Ireland and Malta. So do you expect that to rebalance in 2023? One would hope.
One would hope. As I said, if for example government schemes come back, or there is juniors, I imagine, use this more like a holiday. So the only worry is that if the juniors decide to maybe gather the money and do something more serious, like an academic course or like a pathway program, I believe juniors are more like groups are going for holidays. So it's really up to the parents who are willing. I'm surprised that Ireland and Malta are down as well, because I was my impression was that the UK might have lost a share due to Brexit, and the Ireland and Malta data surprised me as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I can't comment any further.
I think
That's
there might
okay,
be
thank you.
slightly different data when we have the 2022. We'll have
Yes.
a different picture. So this is obviously looking at the 2021 and 2019.
Yeah.
Okay, and Alex, the UK was slightly higher in the Belta survey than previously and overtook Ireland, which we know is very popular for Brazilian language students. Why do you think that was?
I would like to point or compare, let's say, the UK not only to Ireland in this sense. First of all, I believe that this change happened because for especially short-term students for language programs, where we saw an increase in demand in Brazil, was because there is no need of a student visa for a Brazilian, to go to the UK for this kind of programs. So when you compare that to Canada, the US, Australia, to some places where, throughout it has been a little bit more difficult than usual to get a visa lately, it was easier to go to the UK for some people. So this is one of the reasons in my point of view. Besides that, when the junior programs in the UK, as you just showed, there's so many Harry Potter style schools there for Brazilians to choose nowadays, so many nice options. So these team programs have become more and more popular in the UK as well. This also helped a lot with these numbers in Brazil. And then when we look or we compare this change, the UK towards Ireland, Ireland is still a popular destination here, but the issues with accommodation in Ireland were really tricky, lately. And also, I believe it wasn't as easy as it was before for a Brazilian student to find a job while they were in Ireland. So, during these pandemic times and stuff. So I believe that this really helped the UK somehow and made Ireland, lose a little bit of the market in Brazil.
Okay, thank you. And I think that brings us up to date with all the stories this week. At this point, we'll open up to the audience to see if there are any questions for our guests or for the StudyTravel team. These can be on any of the stories or topics we have discussed.
So whilst we're waiting for some questions from the floor, what can you tell us about Belta's activities this year, Alex? What have you got planned?
Yeah, there's always so much we want to do. But Belta has been very happy and lucky, or maybe we're doing a good job, because more and more we're getting international partners helping the association. It's very good for us to see that what we've been doing in Brazil, the institutions and the providers abroad, they are seeing that being linked to Belta is really one of the best ways for them to develop their market in Brazil. So we have so much ahead. We will soon launch our official market survey about 2022. We're also we're going to be in every single international education workshop. We're going to be there bringing this information to you. We just launched last year a new website. I mean, it just keeps on and on with everything we've been doing. In our magazine, which is basically maybe if not the only one, but the best magazine in international education in Brazil, we just ran out of spots for sponsors way before we used to be. So it just shows that the quality of agents we've been able to show the market is really helping everybody.
Brilliant. Okay, looks like we've got a question. Does that news from Holland mean that we should not apply to Holland universities? And that's from Leon. Well, I guess not at the moment. I suppose it's something to look out for, and contact your partners in Holland and find out the situation. I mean, I'm sure they don't want everyone to stop applying, but yeah, it looks like it is a bit of a problem. So we'll be following the story as the year progresses. Okay, and what's new for ALTO this year, Reka?
Well, we're actually preparing for a conference in Istanbul, which is the 25th anniversary conference. Would you believe ALTO is so old, as 25 years old, 98 in Miami, for those of you who were there. They will have fond memories of this. And we're going to Istanbul. We're going to have, great speakers about how to outthink any situation. We always have these leadership topics. We talk about experience economy. We plan to invite a professor from a Turkish university who talks about global inflation and its effect on the economy, and what kind of projections we could be looking at in the next 5 to 10 years. It's all very interesting conversations, but I think the main projects, so not to talk about the events, the main projects that we have is basically this, trying to involve our members in different working groups, which will be in the dynamic pricing, global distribution system area. Another working group will be about leaders' well-being. During the pandemic, I think it became very obvious that that's something we have to look after ourselves, so that we can look after the others. And obviously we carry on with the ALTO best practice guidelines, promoting it. I think more and more sort of fellow associations pick up on it, and I hope to go to some of the association events to promote the document. And in relation to that, obviously we have the mediation panel as a service to our members. So it's all sorts of interesting things happening in 2023. Follow our news. Come and join us at one of the events.
Thanks, Reka. We've actually got a question from the floor for you as well, from Tim Dunkerley, regarding homestay pricing. Are you suggesting we'll see the sort of variable pricing we see in the hotel industry, with high season much higher than low season, or very high peak periods?
Well, this is what this has been a conversation, obviously, within ALTO and within the industry in general. The consensus is that dynamic pricing will come to the industry. It's just a question of time. And I think from the pandemic, what we learned is that it's much better to be prepared for these things rather than just being hit out of the blue. For example, had we known that online delivering courses online was going to be the only way we connect with students, we could have made some preparation in the pre-course, after-course sort of offerings, and then the moving into online would have been more swift. I think that that's exactly what we're talking about. Yes, Tim, that there will be a time when perhaps those clients, as Alex just mentioned, those clients who plan a year ahead, why should they be not rewarded for their planning? And then they are a reliable and calculable asset to the school, whereas someone who makes up their mind 2 weeks before departure in the middle of July, why should they be paying the same price? Not to mention the fact that the schools issue their price list usually during the summer for the following year, and that means that someone setting their price list in June 2022 are setting prices for a student who is arriving at the school in December 2023. So that's 18 months ahead, which is in the current climate, in any climate, but the current climate, that is just impossible. It's impossible, and I believe for the to maintain the quality and to make our industry members sort of sustainable, we're going to have to look at some sort of flexibility in the pricing.
And to update, Tim is very appreciative of your response. Yeah, he sold out in 2023 in December.
You could have asked for double price, you see. You could have asked for double price.
Okay, well, some good points there. I think that's the end of our audience Q&A. I can't see any more questions, which brings us to the end of this week's Study Travel TV Live.
Our next show will be on the 8th of February at the same time of 4 p.m. UK time. Visit the Study Travel TV Live page on the Study Travel Network, which you can find under the magazine section in the menu, where we'll be announcing the guest speakers for the next broadcast, as well as a recording of this episode and past episodes.
So that's it for today. We'd like to say a big thank you to our special guests. Alex, thank you for your time and insights today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Count on me anytime you need me.
And Reka, thank you for joining us again and sharing your thoughts and insights there.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. I'm happy to be back as well. Alex, in 2 months. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
And thank you again to our sponsor this week, Belta. And thanks to everyone for watching. Goodbye.